Hello and welcome to the introduction for this course. What are the course requirements? You need a computer and internet connection to follow along with this course. Who is this course for? This course is for anyone who wants to learn something new. What is the course format? The format of the course is video. Hello and welcome to this video. What is SQL Server? SQL Server is a relational database management system developed by Microsoft. As a database server, it is a software product with the primary function of storing and retrieving data as requested by other software applications which may either run on the same computer or on another computer across a network or the internet. SQL Server exclusively used to only run on a Windows-based environment, but for the past few years, Microsoft has made it also available to run on a Linux-based environment. The current version of SQL Server as of the time I'm recording this video is SQL Server 2019. In most production environments, SQL Server will be installed normally on a dedicated machine, and then users would log into that machine remotely from their own computer to access the databases that they want to use. You can also install SQL Server locally on your own computer. SQL Server can be used for different purposes apart from as a database server. Every server installation of SQL is referred to as an instance. So a single instance is a single installation of SQL Server, which can hold many individual databases. In order to interact and communicate with the data stored in relational database management system, there is a special language called structural query language, which is used to interact with most relational database management system. Microsoft SQL Server has its own implementation of the SQL language, which is called T-SQL, which is also referred to as T-SQL for short. In this video, I gave you a brief introduction to what SQL Server is. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this video. There are 5 editions of SQL Server. The 5 editions of SQL Server are Enterprise, Standard, Web, Developer, and Express. I'll start with the Express. The Express is basically the premium edition. This is mainly used in an enterprise environment. It is comprehensive. It has a high-end data center. It also has capabilities for having very fast performance, unlimited virtualization, also end-to-end business intelligence. It enables high service levels for mission-critical workloads and end-user access to data insights. This is the most complete edition of all of them. To use the Enterprise edition, you must purchase a license copy. The next edition is the Standard edition. This edition is also licensed. That means you need to purchase a license before you can use this edition. And you can use this for basic data management and business intelligence, which is suitable for small to medium-sized firms. So it enables data management with some slightly minimal IT resources. The next edition is the web edition. This edition is a licensed low-cost edition, which is very useful for web hosters to host their web applications. It is scalable, it is affordable, it's manageable, and can be used for small to large scale web applications. The next edition is the developer edition. This edition is completely free to use. It has the same features as the enterprise edition. The only difference is that it is licensed as a developer edition. That means you can use it freely, but you cannot use it in a production environment. The developer edition is very useful if you want to see what the enterprise edition looks like, and then you can play around with the developer one. You can also use it to build and test applications. The only difference is you cannot use it in a live production environment, but it's a good choice to experiment for educational purposes and to build and test medium to large scale applications. The final edition is the Express edition. This edition is completely free to use. It is an entry-level free database, and it is ideal for learning and for building desktop and small server data-driven applications. It is the best choice for independent software vendors, for developers, for hobbyists, if you're building small client applications. However, it is upgradable, so you can have it and also upgrade it to have more advanced database features. The Express edition is the most basic of all the SQL Server editions. It is completely free to use in a production environment. So if you have a small application, or if you're a small company that can't afford the standard or the enterprise edition, then you can use the Express edition in a production environment. And then if you decide that you want more advanced features, you can then upgrade it to a standard or an enterprise edition. In this video, I introduced you to the various editions of SQL Server. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this video. This is the official website for SQL Server 2019 download. So there are some options here to try SQL Server on premises or in the cloud. So if you want to try it on premises, this is the trial version. If you want to try it in the cloud, then you have the option to go to Azure. But what we want the developer edition, which is free. There's also an option to download the Express if you wish to do so. Also, if you want to install SQL Server 2019 on Windows, Linux, or Docker containers, it tells you the way to do that here. But we are going for the developer edition. So I'm going to click on this button link to download the setup file for the developer edition. So I'll click on that, and that should start downloading. You can see here it started downloading the files for the developer setup. This should not take too long, so I'll just give it a few minutes to complete. The download has completed. This is just a partial download. I'm just going to click on this to go to the download location. So I'll click show in folder, and this takes me to my folder where it was downloaded to. So this is what the file looks like. It says SQL 2019-SSE1-dev. You can see the size is not that much. This is just a partial installation. You still have to run this file to download the full installation files. when you download the installation files, it will prompt you for a default location. So I'm going to create a folder here where it's going to download the other components of the SQL Server installation. So I'm going to right click here in my downloads folder, go new, and I'm just going to click on folder. I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it SQL Server download. So I've created this folder here inside my download file called SQL Server 2019 download. So now that I have that folder created, I want to run this file that I initially downloaded. So I'll double click to run, and that will start up the setup files for the installation. So you can see here it gives you three options. You have the basic, the custom, and download media. Download media basically enables you to download the files so that you can later just run it from your computer or any computer you want to run the installation from. I'm going to go for the download media so that I have the option to install it later. It tells me to select the language. I'm going to accept the default package. So you have two options of packages you would like to download, either the ISO or the CAB. So I'm going to leave the default, which is the ISO. I'm going to browse to my downloads folder and just select the folder I created to download it into. So I browse to my downloads folder, and this is the folder called SQL Server. I'm just going to click OK. And you can see here on the select download location, it's now selected the folder I created. So it's going to download it into that. So once that's selected, I'm just going to click download for the download to begin. The download of SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition is now complete. So I'm just going to close this box here. It says, are you sure you want to exit? I'll say yes. I'm going to open up the folder that I downloaded the SQL Server 2019 into. So I'll double click to open it. You can see here it is a disk image file. So I'm just going to double click to open the content. So these are the content. Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to install SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition. I'm going to open up the folder that I downloaded the SQL Server 2019 into. So I'll double click to open it. You can see here it is a disk image file. So I'm just going to double click to open the content. So these are the content. So to begin the installation, I'm just going to double click on this setup file here to run it, and that should start the installation. This is the initial screen you get when you try to install SQL Server, and on the left here it gives you the different steps that the installation is going to take. So the first step is basically the planning, where you just check to make sure that you've got the right hardware and software. If you want to do that, you can just click on this link here to take you to the hardware and software requirements. And there are different documentation as well, security documentation. If you want to read through it, you can. Now there is an important tool here which is called System Configuration Checker. If you run this tool, it will check to make sure that your system is ready to install SQL Server 2019. So I'm going to click to run this checker, and that will quickly run through my system and tell me if my system is ready or not. You can see here it says the operation is completed. I have passed 8. So it ran 8 checks and I've passed it. If you want to see the details, just click show details, and it will tell you everything it has checked, and you can see here the status is passed. I'm just going to click OK to close this. So now I know my system is ready for the installation because I have passed all the hardware and software requirements. Next, I'm going to move on to the installation stage. So I'll click on installation, Inside the installation page, we have the option here to install new SQL Server, standalone installation, or add features to an existing installation. So if you already have SQL Server installed and you want to add features to the existing installation, you can still use this link. But I am installing a single instance of SQL Server, so I'm going to click on that, and that will launch the installation wizard. So this is the installation wizard. The first thing it'll ask is for a product key. It has detected that I'm running a developer edition, so I don't need a product key. If you were not running developer, you'll normally have to put in your product key there. So I'm going to accept and click next, and that will give me the next screen here. So I'm just going to check this box to accept the license agreement. You can see these are the various steps. I'm on step number 2, license terms, that I'm going to go through to complete the installation. So I'll click on next, and it will do some basic checks. It will install some set of files. So I'll just wait for it to finish. On this step of the installation here, I've had some checks here. It says I've passed 3 and failed 0. You can see here the one that I have a warning on. So it's just a warning about the firewall. This is not serious. It's not a showstopper. It will not stop the installation from progressing. If you want to see what it says, you can click on the warning thing here, and it just tells you what that says. So I'm going to click next to progress to the next stage of the installation. The next step is you are provided with this feature selection, so that you select the component you want to install for this instance. In this case, I only want to install the database engine services, so I'm going to check that. That is the only thing I'm going to check. If you look on the right here, it gives you the feature description, tells you what it is, what it does. You can also come back to add features once you've installed SQL Server, and then you have the instance. It tells you this is where it's going to install it, in the root of C program files, Microsoft SQL Server, and it tells you this is a shared feature directory. If you, for example, want to install all the features, you can click on this button and that will select all the features. But before you do that, make sure you do have sufficient disk space. So with the database engine services checked, I'm going to click next to progress to the next step of the installation. The next step is to give your instance a name. So this is the instance configuration. The default name for the instance is called MySQL Server. I'm going to change that. I'm going to give it my own name. I'm going to call it SQL Server 2019. Make sure if you decide to change the default name of the instance, the name you give, make sure there are no spaces. The name you give your instance is also used as the instance ID. So I've given my name instance SQL Server 2019. The instance ID is also going to change to reflect that. All right, you can see it has changed. So I'm going to click next to progress to the next step, which is server configuration. So it's doing the instance configuration now. And once that is done, we've moved on now to the server configuration. So I'm just going to accept all the default that is there and click on next to move to the next step. So I'm going to click next to progress to the next stage. We are now on the database engine configuration page, where you have to set the method of authentication to the SQL Server. The default is Windows authentication mode, which means whatever way you log into your computer, that will be used also to connect to the server. I'm going to select mixed mode, which is a mixture of the Windows authentication and a SQL Server mode, but you have to provide a password to accommodate the SQL Server mode. Once you have entered the password and confirmed the password, you also need to add a user that has administrative rights. So I'm going to click on this button that says add current user. I'll click on that. You can see that has added the username I used to log on to this computer, which is administrator. So once that's been entered and we've entered the password for the SQL Server System Administration account, which is called the SA account, click on next. It then gives you a summary before it actually progresses with the installation. It tells you here ready to install. You can see here I've got 2 more steps. So feel free to read through the summary. If there's anything that's not right, you can change it before you progress. So I'm happy with everything. I'm going to click on install. It also tells you here the configuration file path. So I'm going to click install, and that will begin the installation. You can see it says installation in progress. So I've gone through all the steps. I've got just one more step to complete. The installation is now complete. So you can see here status says succeeded and tells you all the features it has installed. So I'm just going to click on this close button here to exit the installation screen and also exit this screen. The next thing to do is to check for SQL Server in my programs menu. So I'm going to click on start, and on the start here there should be a folder for Microsoft SQL Server. You can see here it says new Microsoft SQL Server 2019. If I expand that, you can see here it tells me these are all the things it has installed. So these tools are quite useful. We've got the SQL Server 2019 Configuration Manager, SQL Server 2019 Error Usage, SQL Server 2019 Import Export, SQL Server 2019 Installation Center. So these are very useful tools that will come in handy if you want to perform configuration or import stuff and also add additional features to your installation of SQL Server. Hello and welcome to this video. What is SQL Server Management Studio? SQL Server Management Studio is also referred to as SSMS. SQL Server Management Studio is an integrated development environment which provides a graphical interface for connecting and working with Microsoft SQL Server. SQL Server Management Studio is a free tool provided by Microsoft to manage SQL servers. SQL Server Management Studio is used by professional developers and database administrators to manage and administer SQL servers. SQL Server Management Studio can be used to access, to configure, to manage, to administer, and develop all components of SQL Server. Let's go ahead and download and then install SQL Server Management Studio. To download SQL Server Management Studio, we're going to go to our Programs menu and look for the SQL Server 2019 folder, and inside that folder we should have a tool. So we've got Microsoft SQL Server 2019. I'm going to expand that, and we have this tool here that says SQL Server 2019 Installation Center. So if I click on that, it will launch the installation screen, and then from there we can download the SQL Server Management Studio. So this is the SQL Server Installation Center, which allows you to add components to a previously installed SQL Server instance. So I'm going to click on this installation tab here, and within the installation tab I'm going to click on the option that says Install SQL Server Management Tools. So if I click on this, it's going to take me to the download page where I can download it. So I'm going to click on that, and that will take me to the site that will enable me to download the SQL Server Management Studio. So it's trying to launch the site. So this is where it's going to take you. So I'm just going to scroll down, and you can see here there is a download link to download SQL Server Management Studio. It tells you the release number, the build number, release date. So I'm going to click to begin the download. You can see here the download has started here. So I'm just going to wait for it to complete, and then I will run the installation files. The download has completed, so this is the downloaded file. So I'm just going to click to show in folder, and that would take me to the location where it's downloaded it. This is the location where the SQL Server Management Studio setup file was downloaded to. So I'm just going to double click on it to start to install it. So I'll double click, and that should bring up the installation page. So I'll give it a few minutes to load that page. So you can see here it's loaded the page and tells me the location. This is where it's going to install it, and there is an option to change the location if you're not happy with it, but I would recommend you accept the default location and then just click on this option to install. So I'll click on the install button to progress the installation. The time it takes to install depends on your processing speed for your computer. The setup has completed for the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm just going to click on the close button to exit. So if we go back into the start menu and locate the SQL Server folder, mine is called SQL Server 2019. So this is the folder. If I expand this, I should see a new component. You can see here it says Microsoft SQL Server Tools. If I expand that, we should see different tools that the SQL Server tools installed: analysis services, deployment, database engine tuning, and this is the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So if we want to interact with the SQL Server and log into it, we'll use the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So that is it for this video. We successfully downloaded and installed Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I'll be connecting to an SQL Server instance. To begin, I'm going to start up the SQL Server Management Studio. So I'll click on my Start menu and then locate the SQL Server Management Studio, which is located in this folder called Microsoft SQL Server Tools 18. I'm going to expand that and select the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. The first time you run SQL Server Management Studio, the Connect to Server window opens up. If this window does not open up automatically, you can also launch it manually. So let me show you. I'm just going to cancel out of it. So if the window doesn't automatically show up, from within the Object Explorer, you can click on the option to connect and select Database Engine, and that will pop open the window. In the Connect to Server window, the name of your server instance should be populated. If it is not populated, you can click on the drop down, and then within the Browse option, you can click on Database Engine and you can select the name from there. For the authentication, make sure that Windows Authentication is selected and then click on the Connect button. To verify that your SQL Server connection succeeded, just expand and explore the objects inside the Object Explorer. So I'm just going to click on the plus sign and that will expand. So if I want to see the databases I have, I click on the plus next to the databases. So the fact that I can see all these objects indicates that my connection to the server was successful. To disconnect from the SQL Server, you just right click on the name of the server, just click disconnect, and to exit Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, you click on the file option and then click on the option to exit. Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, you'll learn how to install the AdventureWorks sample database. AdventureWorks is a fictional company that Microsoft uses in its documentation for demonstrations. Link to download the sample database is displayed on the screen. This is the GitHub repository where the AdventureWorks sample databases are stored. So I'm just going to scroll down to see the one I want. So this is AdventureWorks full database backup, and there are different types. The one I want to download is this one called AdventureWorks 2016.bak. .bak basically means it's a backup file. Also notice in parentheses we've got OLTP. OLTP basically stands for Online Transaction Processing. So I'm going to click on the link for the AdventureWorks 2016.bak. I'll click on that and that should download the file. You can see the file being downloaded to my download location. Sometimes Microsoft moves things around just in case when you view this video, if this link or the files are no longer in this location, I'm going to have a copy of this backup I've just downloaded for you to download just in case it's no longer available or the link has been moved. The backup has completed, so I'm going to click on it to show in folder, and that would take me to the location of the backup download. This is the file that was downloaded and that is the size. In order to install this sample database inside my SQL Server, I will have to restore it from this backup here. SQL Server looks for backup files in a specific location. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to relocate this file from the download location into the folder that SQL Server will go to look for a backup file. So I'm going to right click and click on cut to relocate this file. So let's go to the location where SQL Server looks for backup files. I'm going to open up my C drive, and under my C drive we've got the program files. I'll click on program files and look for a Microsoft SQL folder, which is this one here, and then I'll look for the instance of my SQL Server, which is this one called SQL Server 2019. I'm going to click on that. Inside that, I'll click on this folder that says MS SQL, and inside that there is a backup folder. So I'll click on backup, I'll right click and I'll paste it there. So I've now relocated the file I downloaded. I have now logged into my SQL Server. So in order to install that database file I downloaded, I need to right click on my databases folder. So right click, and there is an option to restore database. So I'm going to click on that. We wait for the window to open. So here we have to specify where we're going to restore the database from. It's going to be from a device. So I click on the device option, and this button here that's got several dots, I'm going to click on this in order to go to the location where the backup file is. Under the backup media type, make sure you have the file selected. If I click on the drop down, there are other options. We've got the URL, so make sure yours is on file, and then click on the add button. When you click on the add button, SQL Server knows where to go to for any backup file. You can see it has automatically gone to the location of the SQL Server. You can see the path here. It says SQL Server 2019, which is the name of my SQL Server instance. So I'm going to select the name of the file that I want to restore from backup. So that's the name of the file. The file name is populated here, and I just need to click on the OK button. So I click OK, and then it tells me the path. This is the full path to where the backup file is. Next, I'll press the OK button, and you can see we've got this option checked to make sure we're going to restore this database from full backup. Next, click on the OK button, and you can see the backup is being restored there. So we'll give it a few minutes to complete, and we should get a message to say that the backup has completed. You can see here the message has popped up saying database AdventureWorks 2016 restored successfully. So I'll click OK. So if we take a look at my databases folder, you can see this database here I've just restored, the AdventureWorks 2016. If I expand that, you will see all the tables that database has. You see, got lots of tables. So that's it for this video. In this video, I showed you how to install the AdventureWorks 2016 database. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Hello and welcome to this video on stored procedures. A stored procedure in SQL Server is a group of one or more transact SQL statements or a reference to a Microsoft.NET Framework common runtime language method. Procedures resembles the constructs in other programming languages because they can accept input parameters and return multiple values in the form of output parameters to the calling program. They can also contain programming statements that perform operations in the database, and these include calling program. By calling programs, I mean calling other procedures. Stored procedures can also return a status value to a calling program to indicate success or failure, and also the reason for the failure. There are several benefits of using a stored procedure. So you have reduced server-client network traffic, stronger security, reuse of code, so the code can be reused, easier maintenance, improved performance. So let me quickly explain each of the benefits. I'll start with the first one, which is reduced server-client network traffic. The commands in a procedure are executed as a single batch of code. This can significantly reduce the network traffic between the server and the client. This is because only the call to execute the procedure is sent across the network. Without the code encapsulation provided by a stored procedure, every individual line of code would have to cross the network. Let's take a look at the stronger security. Multiple users and client programs can perform operations on underlying database objects through a procedure, even if the user and the programs do not have direct permissions on those underlying objects. So what happens? The procedure controls what processes and activities are performed and protects the underlying database objects. This eliminates the requirement to grant permissions at the individual object level and simplifies the security layers. Let's look at the reuse of code. The code for any repetitious database operation is the perfect candidate for encapsulation in procedures. What this does, it eliminates needless rewrite of the same code, so you don't need to rewrite the code. It decreases code inconsistency and allows the code to be accessed and executed by any user or application possessing the necessary permissions. Let's take a look at easier maintenance. When client applications call procedures and keep database operations in the data layer or tier, only the procedure must be updated for any changes in the underlying database. The application layer or tier remains separate and does not have to know doesn't have to know any changes that occurs on the database layout, the relationships or the processes. Let's take a look at the improved performance. By default, a procedure compiles the first time it is executed, and this way creates an execution plan that can be reused for subsequent executions. Since the query processor does not have to create a new plan, it typically takes less time to process the procedure. There are several types of stored procedures. We've got the user-defined. A user-defined procedure can be created in a user-defined database or in all system databases except the resource database. The procedure can be developed in either Transact SQL or as a reference to a Microsoft.NET Common Runtime Language method. Next, we've got a temporary stored procedure. Temporary procedures are a form of user-defined procedure. The temporary procedures are like a permanent procedure, except temporary procedures are stored in the temp DB. There are also two types of temporary procedures. You've got the local and the global. The main difference between them is in their names, their visibility and their availability. Local temp procedures have a single number sign, which is a £, as the first character of their names. They are visible only to the current user connection, and they are deleted when the connection is closed. With a global temporary procedure, you have two number signs as the first two characters of their names. They are visible to any user after they are created, and they are deleted at the end of the session using the stored procedure. We also have a system stored procedure. The system procedures are included with SQL Server, so they are physically stored in the internal or hidden resource database and logically can appear in the system schema of a system and end user defined database. We also have the extended user defined stored procedure. These basically enable the creating of external routines in a programming language such as C, and these procedures are basically DLLs that can be an instance of the SQL Server dynamic, and they can load in a dynamic way. So these are some of the key types of stored procedures. Hello and welcome to this lecture on creating a stored procedure. There are a couple of ways you can create a stored procedure. The first is to use the SQL Server Management Studio, and the second option is to use the Transact SQL. Before you can create a stored procedure, you need to have the correct permissions. So you require the create procedure permission on the actual database, and you need the alter permission on the schema in which the procedure is being created. If you are a database administrator, you should have the relevant permissions. We are going to create a stored procedure using Transact SQL. The reason being that the version of SQL Server Express we are using does not give you the ability to create a stored procedure using the SQL Server Management Studio. You click and locate the SQL Server Management Studio, which is this icon here. Click on that and that would launch the SQL Server Management Studio. Click connect, and once you've connected, I'll just show you where the stored procedures are kept on the database. Click on expand databases and expand the AdventureWorks 2014, and inside the AdventureWorks database 2014 you will see this option called Programmability. Expand that and you see the stored procedures there. So that's where the stored procedures are. So if I expand, you will see that. If we were not using the Express free edition, normally you would have been able to right click on stored procedure and there would have been an option to create a new stored procedure. So that's why we can't do it in this version, which is a free Express version of SQL Server. We're going to, however, do it using a query. So we're going to create a stored procedure using Transact SQL. So click on this new query window here and that will open this query. I'm just going to click on this X so that we can get more space in the query editor. I've already pre-staged the code. I'm just going to add it on. So I have added the stored procedure. So we're using the AdventureWorks 2014 database, which is the database I've selected here, and we're basically creating a procedure from the human resources schema. So if I expand the tables here, you should see we've got a human resources here. If I just scroll there, alright, so we've got the human resources schema. So the name of my stored procedure is this, get USB get employee test 2, and these are the variables. Got the last name is going to be end voucher data type and takes in 50 character maximum. The first name also, the variable is going to be a first name, and the data type is nvarchar. So the at basically indicates a variable. So this is basically what the stored procedure is going to do. It's going to select first name, last name, department from this human resources .v employee database history. So where the first name equals to the first name variable and the last name equals to the last name variable, and the end date is null, right? So that's the stored procedure setup. This here, this set no count on, basically what that does, it stops the message that shows the count of the number of rows affected by a transact SQL statement or stored procedure from being returned as part of the result set. Don't worry, the query will be available for you to download under the resource page. Once you have created a stored procedure, you need to be able to call the stored procedure to execute the code. So I'm going to get rid of this code here and add another code that we will use to call the stored procedure. Actually, you need to keep the stored procedure there. I've decided to keep it there so that when we're trying to execute or call it, it can see the stored procedure. So this bit here is the actual stored procedure, and this piece of code here is what we are using to call it. All right, so don't get rid of it, leave it on the screen. We're going to call it using this block of code. So what this is saying here, we are executing the stored procedure called this. That's the name of the stored procedure. And we are passing, don't forget we've set a variable for last name and variable for first name. So we are now passing the variables for the last name and the first name. Okay, so we've got last name and first name variables. So we use the execute, and then we can use the or execute this, the last name, specify like that or like that. So these are various ways you can execute the same block of code. That's why I put or so you can execute it in either way. So let me click on the execute button. So you can see here it says the query executed successfully, and it tells you 3 rows have been added. So these are the results of the query on the stored procedure being executed. So that's it for this lecture on stored procedure. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. Hello and welcome. In this video I'll be showing you how to modify a stored procedure. So these are the stored procedures we created previously. So to modify any of them, you just right click and go click on the modify option, and that will open up the query. So I'm just going to modify something slightly. So you see where it's got job title, I'm just going to change the n varchar from 50 to 55, and you can actually test the syntax on the query menu by clicking on the parse. The parse is this green tick here, this tick. If you click on it, you can see it says command completed successfully. If you want to save the modifications to the procedure on the query menu, which is this menu here, you can click on the execute button and that would save that. However, if you want to save the updated procedure to a transact SQL script, on the file menu here, you're going to do file, and you can select the file save as. So click on the file save as option, and you can replace the name of the query here to your own name. So I'm saving it with the name of the query. So if you look here, this is the name of the procedure. I'm saving it as that, and I'm just adding a 2 next to it. I'll click save, and you can see the green stripe, which means it has been saved. So that's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to guide you through the general property page of a stored procedure. So I have connected to my SQL Server Management Studio, and I have got my AdventureWorks 2014 database expanded. So expand, under programmability, you've got the stored procedures. So I'm going to right click on one of the ones we created earlier, and just on the bottom there is an option for properties, and that will give you access to the property page. So this is the property page, and you can see we've got the general options selected. So these are the options for the general settings. So we've got database. This is the name of the database that contains the stored procedure. Then we've got the server, which is the name of the current server instance. And then we've got the user. The name of the user of this connection tells you the name of the user. And then we have the description. The schema refers to the schema that owns the stored procedure. So this stored procedure is owned by the human resources schema. And we have the created date. The date the stored procedure was created tells you there. And on the schema, you got the name, which is the name of the stored procedure, and created date. You got system object. System object basically indicates whether the stored procedure is a system object. So the values are either true or false. So you can see here it says false. Then we've got the execute as, which refers to whoever is executing the stored procedure. So we've got some options here. We've got ANSI nulls. This indicates if the object was created with the ANSI nulls option. And we have encrypted here. It indicates whether the stored procedure is encrypted. Values are either true or false. You can see here encrypted, it says false. And we have quoted identifier. Quoted identifier indicates if the object was created with the quoted identifier option. It says it was, so it's set to true. And we have the for replication option. What that does, it indicates if the object was created with the for replication option. It says false, so it wasn't created with that. We have the recompile. Recompile indicates if the object was created with the recompile option. And natively compiled indicates if it was natively compiled, the value is true or false. And schema bound indicates if it is bound to the schema. So it tells you, if you click on each one, it gives you a description. So you can see here, schema bound indicates whether the stored procedure is bound to the schema of the database object it references. So if you want to know what each one does, click on it. It tells you, indicates whether the stored procedure is natively compiled and so on. So that's it for the general page of the properties section for a stored procedure. Thanks for watching. Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be showing you how to view dependencies of a stored procedure. This is important in case you want to delete a stored procedure or modify or rename a stored procedure. So it's good to check if they have any dependencies. I have connected using the SQL Server Management Studio. So there are a couple of ways you can check your dependencies. You can check it using the actual SQL Server Management Studio, or you can use a Transact SQL. In this example, I'm going to be using the SQL Server Management Studio. So once you're connected, expand your databases. Make sure you've got the AdventureWorks 2014. Expand that, and then expand programmability, and then stored procedure. So under the stored procedure, we can just pick any. So I'll right click on one of the ones we've created, and there is an option here to view dependencies. So click on that, and that will bring up this screen here, and here you can see a list of all the dependencies. So you can see objects that depends on this the name of the stored procedure, it gives you there. And if I go to the bottom here, it tells you the selected object name, the dependency type. So if you've got any dependencies, this is where they will be listed. This is important in case you want to delete, modify, rename a stored procedure. So that's it. That's how you basically check to view the dependencies a stored procedures may have. Thank you. Bye for now. Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be showing you how to delete a stored procedure. I've already connected using SQL Server Management Studio, and these are my stored procedures here under the stored procedure folder. So I'm going to delete one of the stored procedures we created. So by just right clicking, and inside the properties there's an option for delete on the bottom. So it may be off the screen because of where I'm recording this, but if you look on this menu here down, there is an option for delete. If you click on that, it will give you this option here. And the first thing it does, you can see here, it's got the delete object. Then it's got the script, tells you the name of the object, and it will give you an option to show dependencies. So you can click on that if you want to see the dependencies. It's always a good idea. So once you check that is okay, just click OK, and that will be deleted. You can see it's deleted. So that's basically how you can delete stored procedures. Obviously, you need to check that it's not going to affect any dependencies. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome. In this video, I will be showing you how to view the definition of a stored procedure in SQL Server Management Studio using the Object Explorer menu options. So open up SQL Server Management Studio and expand the stored procedure. So I'm just going to highlight one of the stored procedure here. So you right click on it and you click on this option that says script stored procedure as. So these are the different definitions. For example, if you want to see the definition of the create, we'll click on this new query editor window, and that will give us the definition. So it tells you here the object is stored procedure. This is the schema, and that's the name. And you can see here it gives you an update. and basically tells you how the stored procedure is set up, gives you the definition. So that's what this gives you. You can view the definition. Okay, so there are other options. For example, if I go here, you can go to, there's one, if you want to see how to alter, you could click on that. That will open another query window. You can see here, these are the definition. You can see it's called alter procedure. So if you want to alter, that's basically the definition for altering a stored procedure. Let's try one more. Right click, you do script stored procedure as. If you want to drop, that is delete. Drop means delete. So this is the definition for deleting a stored procedure. This here in green is known as a comment. So comments are actually ignored when you execute any query. Okay, so that's basically how to view the definition of a stored procedure. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.